Well, hello you wonderful people, I'm Amy or AWayfaringFrog and welcome back to the channel and to another Sims 4 speed build. Today we're building something that's heavily inspired by the Enchanted by Nature expansion pack that's due to come out next month. So as of recording this video, isn't out, so this build does not include any of that pack, sadly, but it looks like so much fun. I'm really excited for it, and for the first time ever I'm actually super excited for the cast too, because it looks like there's a lot of really fun unique items in it. I saw some horns on one of the fairies that they displayed in the most recent trailer. Maybe they've displayed more since then, but it really looks like you could create some cool D&D style characters. So I'm super excited for that. I really love fantasy, so I think that'll be a lot of fun. And it's really nice to be interested in casts for the first time in quite a long time, because it's not usually something I care about as much. I'm just much more of a builder when it comes to The Sims 4. But anyway, we are building in Windenburg today on the Cottage Am See lot. I actually tried to build several times on this lot on the channel, and every time I've always moved whatever I was building to a different lot in the end. But today we actually build the whole build on this lot. So that'll be nice, and I think it really suits the fairy vibe around here. And we're building something that's very castle inspired. So I was recently watching a video from Griffy. If you don't know them, they are a Sims YouTuber and they do a lot of building. And recently, like I mentioned, they did kind of a fairy castle build, and I mean it was very different to what I've done here, but it just gave me so much inspiration to build my own little castle for a fairy. So that is what we are doing today. And as you can see, I've got a couple of tall towers and then kind of a diagonal piece, which was a choice. It didn't end up being much of a problem at all though, which I was very surprised about. But if you don't build with diagonals, you may not be aware that it makes everything a little bit more difficult, and countertops don't really like being on diagonals. There's a weird lighting issue, but it didn't end up being too much of a problem on this build, as you'll see when we get to decorating the interior. So that was quite nice. We are just decorating the outside. As you can see, I've used this really lovely wallpaper that's got kind of like mossy green bits within the grouting of the stone, and it really gives fairy vibes. I think ever since the Castle Estate kit came out, a lot of people felt like this pack has so much cool fairy stuff. So I made sure to use that. I did also originally try out using the doors from the Castle Estate kit, but I ended up switching those out for some from Life and Death. And then I combined that with cottage living windows. So there's quite a bit going on with the different decor styles on the exterior, but I think it all works together quite well. So hopefully you agree. At the moment, I'm just playing around with this debug fence, which comes from Get Together. So it's not in the usual catalogue, but I really liked how it had the curvy pieces. And whilst you can do kind of curvy fence pieces in the game, I didn't want to have to put down an actual tile. I just wanted the terrain underneath it, and if you delete the tile, then the curved fences in the game delete as well. So debug was really the only option here. And I did have some issues when I was playtesting with it. It turns out they have huge hitboxes, the big corner pieces in particular. Your Sims can't walk through them despite there being a big open space. So that was really confusing for a while. I ended up getting around it, which I did off camera, by just placing the biggest fence pieces on the basement level. There isn't a basement in this build, but then raising them up from the basement level meant that your Sims, they weren't technically there for your Sims to have to worry about, if that makes sense, because the hitbox of them is on the floor below. So it does mean though that the Sims try to walk through them, but while I was playtesting I ended up editing the landscaping, so some of the landscaping would cover that section, so it was fine. Your Sims don't walk through it in the end. But that was really odd. There's a lot of strange things with debug. Sometimes stuff that you would expect your Sims to be able to walk through, they don't. Other times, like this, they just won't go near it at all. It's very odd. But I suppose that's the nature of having some items from the debug menu which aren't really meant for general build use. Anyhow, we are now sorting out the windows on the build. I did skip a few sections of this because, as you may have been seeing already. I kept changing my mind about the windows. I even went for a lot of the Castle Estate kit ones initially, and I cut that completely off camera because I didn't keep any of them. But I really liked these cottage living windows with the shutters. I think the colour of them matches really well with the wallpaper that I've chosen, and they're just really interesting. I've never used them for a castle build before. And then for the towers, I just picked out this arched base game window as well, and they seem to tie in quite nicely. So I thought it was a lot of fun. I do switch around where the shuttered windows are a little bit. It was kind of fun having these towers because of the kind of really quirky shape of this build. I found fitting in a bathroom very difficult. And I end up doing a 4 or 3-story bathroom in that tallest tower at the back. So it's an ensuite that your Sims can access from the only bedroom in the house. And then you've got the toilet sink on the first section of the bathroom, then you go up the ladder and you've got the bath, and then you go up another ladder and you've got the shower. It sounds very weird, and I'm not sure how it would be for gameplay in terms of your Sims having to climb up and down the ladder all of the time, but it was kind of fun to do, to be honest. I've never done something like that before, and I just think it worked best, to be honest. There wasn't much else I could do with that space, so it was a lot of fun. I hope you agree when we get to that, but we'll see that on the interior decorating side. We are now just adding a lot of ivy to the walls. I really wanted it to look super overgrown. It looks like in the new expansion pack as well, we should be getting a lot of more ivy items, which I'm so excited for because I think we desperately need them. I'm so sick of using debug. It's a nightmare. So it'll be nice to have them actually in the catalogue, and for people who don't really build that often, I think it would be nice to have those a lot more accessible too. On the build now, we are just adding a bit of kind of ivy to the roof. I just used the base game bushes, so the low-lying pale flowers, and then there's kind of a smaller bush style of that as well, just to try and add a little bit more to the roof, so it just looks more like it's being taken over by nature. And I did use one of the little roof pieces from Life and Death where it looks like the roof is caved in slightly or like broken apart. I just thought that was a fun little feature, and I figured this would be a very old building, a super old castle that a fairy inhabits or something, so I wanted to make it look a little bit dilapidated. But in terms of landscaping the rest of the space, I go in with a lot of the debug from the Get Together expansion pack, since that is the pack that this world comes from. So I just wanted to make it feel a little bit more cohesive and feels like it fits in to the surrounding areas. And so a lot of the colour scheme out here is very purple, just because those are the plants that Get Together use in Windenburg. I also spotted around a few of these little mushrooms, which are from the Realm of Magic debug. So they're kind of like fun mystical items, and because as of doing this recording, the only closest thing we have to fairies is spellcasters, so I felt like using some items from the spellcasters pack made sense here, so it was a bit more of a functional build at least. And then adding a little walkway here, that is the part of the garden that your Sims can't access, or couldn't access initially, but as I mentioned, I have amended it now off camera, so they can walk through, but it was very bizarre. Despite it being a huge open space, they couldn't get through, even after deleting all of the landscaping. It was just the fence pieces had an invisible barrier to them. And I also used this little post box from Werewolves. I thought it was really cute and matched with the style nicely, so I picked it in this blue swatch, so it kind of tied in with all of the lavender around, and then I grabbed a few little planter pots. Mostly the ones from the Business and Hobbies expansion pack, because I just think that pottery item is so pretty. And then I went through and added a couple of insecty items. So we've got the bird box in the very back of the garden, and then at this front door, I guess it's kind of up to you which door you use as the front, because you'll see when we do the interior, but the one in the garden is more designed as if it's a front door, but then the other one looks more like a front door on the exterior. But I feel like a lot of people will sometimes move around which door is the front one if their back door is very close by. But anyhow, I wanted to use those insect boxes because they felt very fairy-esque as well, since fairies are very involved in nature at least in the upcoming expansion pack. I just wanted to bring some of that in here, so I grabbed a couple of those, and they are fully functional as well. And there's kind of another reason why I felt like that wouldn't be the front door that the fairies end up using here, because that's where they put their insects instead. I can't remember if I specifically set one of these as a front door before I uploaded it to the gallery, but you can always amend that in gameplay if you did want to play in this build. And if you did want to grab it, it is available on the Sims 4 gallery just under my EAID, AWayfaringFrog. It's also under the hashtag AWayfaringFrog, and the information for that is always in the description down below. And now we are starting on the interior after finishing all of the landscaping. As I mentioned though off camera, I do edit it a little bit just because of the fence issue, but it doesn't change too much and it stays in very much the same style. For the interior, I ended up using this wood from the cottage living pack. I just used it in a really dark swatch. I ended up finding that the dark wood swatches really tied in nicely here. As you can see, I've got it for the front doors as well, those doors being from the Life and Death expansion. And then in the kitchen, this is one of the things that I was trying to talk about earlier with the fact that it's a diagonal room. You can kind of see some weird lighting on the top of the counters, and it's just a glitch that happens whenever you put countertops along a diagonal, but because these are such dark countertops, I didn't think it was a problem at all, so it kind of worked. It is a bit odd how there's such a big gap for the fridge, but we'll just have to pretend to not see it because I couldn't figure out another way to put the fridge that made sense and got rid of that huge gap, so it is what it is. Sometimes you just have to accept the limitations of The Sims 4, I feel, and just move on. Anyway, I did end up adding a little shelf underneath the window. I thought that was kind of a fun addition, and then it let me add in lots of clutter, and somehow cluttered spaces again feel very fairy, so I thought that was a lot of fun. And I went heavily with a green scheme. I'm sorry, I do that quite a lot. I just really love the color green, and again, it's very nature inspired. I did try to bring in lots of other colors though through the clutter, so as you can see I'm using a lot of the kitchen clutter kit, and I used a few dark blue items and some reds and yellows, so I did try to make it a bit more colorful rather than just being color drenched in green, but green is definitely the main color scheme throughout. And then those little oven gloves that I added on top of the chopping boards, they delete themselves, which is really annoying. I've noticed that keeps happening whenever I put items on top of that chopping board, or it also happens with the plates from both Home Chef Hustle and Horse Ranch. The plates in that pack kind of act as a shelf so you can put things on top of them, and they just love deleting, which is really frustrating, to be honest. I don't know why it happens, but I often put things on top of those just because I can, and I think it looks kind of cute, despite it being fairly impractical if you have a plant on top of your plates. Having to move that every time you want to make a meal or something, or serve your meal, would be really annoying, but in The Sims it looks cute. But yeah, the game just loves deleting it, so that is a pain. So I mean, you can already see that it's gone. I don't think I ended up replacing it, I just got fed up of it deleting itself, so that is not on the version of the Sims 4 gallery, but it's probably not a bad thing if it's constantly going to disappear for you as well. And anyhow, we are now just sorting out the wallpapers. As you can see, I used this one from Cottage Living because it felt kind of neutral enough, and also brought in lots of that lovely green, even though it's a different green to the fridge that I've got from the country kitchen kit. I feel like they tie in nicely together, and I don't think I've ever used that fridge in that swatch. It's a really nice deep green, and it was a lot of fun to include here. There is actually a sofa as well from the Crystal Creations stuff pack. I end up using that sofa, but it does come in a green swatch that almost perfectly matches the fridge, but it just looked way too much when I put it in here, so I ended up changing the swatch, which you'll see shortly. So yeah, here's that sofa that I was talking about, and the green is it's just not right, so I went for a deeper blue one instead, and I paired it with this fireplace which comes from the Secret Sanctuary or Bella Goth kit. I think it's so pretty, and it is kind of whimsical in the way it's shaped, so it just feels like it fits in so nicely. So I included that. And then laundry day just always feels nice and rustic. So again, feels very fairy. I included a little side table from there. I also include an ottoman a bit later in the entryway. And then this table, the coffee table that I've added, is from the Paranormal Stuff pack. It's not one I regularly use because a lot of the swatches have this kind of like decal on it, or this paintwork of just a branch with flowers, and it's really pretty, but I feel like the colors of it make it difficult to use because that pack has a lot of brightly colored furniture. But in the black swatch here, I just felt like, again, it helped bring in lots of nice extra colors throughout the space and worked kind of well. So I just changed the laundry day side table to be black as well to help tie in the coffee table. And yeah, I think it works nicely. So hopefully you agree too, because it was kind of nice and refreshing to be able to use an item that I don't really ever use. It's one of the things that I often try to do when I build, because it feels like I've spent a lot of money on all of these packs at this point. So it would be nice to actually use them rather than just repeatedly using the same stuff. So I do try to mix it up a little bit. And we are now just adding a bit of clutter around the room. I used quite a lot from the Wells game pack in this particular space. The letters and those little mushrooms, again, felt very fairy. And then I added in a laundry day little floating candle set on the coffee table, as well as the base game books. And then there was an event where you could unlock an actual skill item. So that separate book on the table, which has like a little amethyst on it, that's an item that your Sims can pick up and read, and it gives them, I think, 3 skills: the gardening, fishing, and maybe cooking skill. So it's a little fun item that came from an event, and it just seemed like it fit in well here. So I added that. I think when your Sims read it as well, it has some kind of weird animation, a bit like the books from Realm of Magic, where your Sims can kind of read them while they float in the air, because I guess they're using their magical power to read. This one seems to emit some kind of a dark aura from it, I think, from memory. It's been a while since I used it, but I thought it was kind of fun, and again, sort of fit the fairy theme because it's got some magical stuff going on with it. And also, I'm so looking forward to the next event. I am a big advocate of these events that the Sims team keep putting on. So we're getting this like nature-inspired one soon, and it looks like we're getting Shrek-inspired stuff. I feel like there's an outhouse that looks just like it came out of Shrek, so I'm very excited for that. I think it looks like a lot of fun, and it seems like it's going to be a woohoo spot as well. So that will be in base game, providing that you get involved in going onto The Sims 4 when that comes out. So definitely recommend jumping on that so you can get some free stuff, because historically the events are pretty easy. You can cheat your way through them if you want, just to unlock the items. I have done that before, especially when they've sometimes refused to work. Cheating is sometimes it's just a little bit easier and makes you want to scream less. So I've done that, and yeah, it means you get free stuff. So I definitely recommend having a look at the event when it comes out. I think it might be next week it starts. I can't remember. It's very, very soon. But there's often a lot of time for you to play through and access all of the items. But if you do play The Sims 4, I really think it's worth doing it, just in case you decide one day, oh, I'm really into it again. You know how sometimes you go through phases of never playing The Sims and then always playing it. Having those items might be nice for the times when you do feel like playing The Sims 4. So be sure to check it out. I think it'll be a lot of fun. And I was thinking of maybe building a little starter home as well to play in that event. So let me know if you're interested in seeing that in the comments down below, and I'll definitely consider doing a little build for that. It might end up going up a lot later than when the event starts, as I've got a few other builds planned for now that I want to get out before fairies, when I will inevitably be building lots of fairy related stuff. But anyway, I've just talked over both of the kind of hallway entryway spaces. So we are now on the second floor section, or the first floor if you use ground floor in your vocabulary. And I just included a little chess table here and added lots of decorations in. So it's a bit of a skill room, but mostly a decoration room, I suppose. And again, using this little hanging plant from, well, there's lots now that we've got, which is great. The one from Life and Death, which goes on the wall, the one from Little Simsy's Comfort Gamer kit with the cow plant peeking out, and then the one from the sleek bathroom kit, which sits on a surface and then drapes down. It looks so pretty. I end up using that later as well to drape down where one of the ladders is. It's perfectly functional as well, and I think it looked so cute. So looking forward to showing that a bit later. That was on the top floor of the bathroom next to where the shower is. It kind of feels funny saying the top floor of the bathroom. Like that's a normal thing to have a multi-story bathroom. But after decorating this hallway upstairs and doing a lot of clutter on the walls, I felt like the living room needed a bit more. So I jumped back down and added in some more clutter to include a bit more of a custom gallery wall, as well as just a few other things here and there. And this tiny shelf, which comes from Crystal Creations, I think is such a cute one. So I enjoyed using that around. It's just such a good size for a little bit of clutter. And I also paired it with these tiny books, which are a shelf piece, which comes from the Book Nook kit. So not a limited pack build, if you hadn't noticed already. But anyway, we are jumping into the bedroom now, and I used this beautiful canopy bed, which comes from the Realm of Magic game pack, and then paired it with this rug from Crystal Creations. Those packs just feel like they tie in really nicely together. And again, I felt like using the Realm of Magic bed in this swatch helped bring in splashes of pink and red here and there. And I also, because it was such a long, skinny room, I felt like sectioning it off somehow would make it look a little bit more cohesive. So I ended up using this screen, which is actually just from Base Game, I believe that one might be. And then that created kind of a dressing room section of the space. I also took this mirror from the Jungle Adventure game pack and leaned it up against the window. Even though it kind of clips with the window, I don't think it's that obvious, and I thought it was a lot of fun. I really wanted to use that mirror, and that was kind of the best place to put it, so I thought, I'll just cover up the window, it's fine. They don't really have proper curtains in here either, because I used the ones from the Blooming Rooms kit, so you can't really draw them. They're just kind of hanging around the window. So there's not a huge amount of privacy, so having the mirror there was probably actually very helpful. And I just thought it looked really cute, and again, that mirror is beautiful. I absolutely love it. It's one of the items, as I was mentioning earlier, when I try to use new stuff, that's one of the items that I have to stop myself from using because I would overuse it otherwise. But anyway, we did just put a few little art items out on the balcony, including a rocking chair so that your fairies can just chill out and do a bit of creative crafting. And I also included a small guitar. I think that one was from the Lovestruck expansion pack. It's very pretty. The swatches on it just felt, again, kind of in keeping with the theme that we've got here. And on the other side of the bedroom, I just included this little shelf piece, this little bureau, which is not functional. It's not something that your Sims can use to change clothes, but because of the wardrobe, I figured it wasn't a problem. And then it kind of looks like it would be more clothes storage space, which I really like doing. Even though it doesn't need to be there for a building to be functional, I really like adding lots of clothing storage and just storage in general when I build Sims houses, because it just feels realistic. So I often aim to do that. And then I added in a few pieces of jewelry, which bring in lots of extra color again. And this frame item that I put on the wall opposite the bed, it's actually an early purchase reward for the Life and Death expansion pack. So I'm sorry if you don't have that pack, although I end up deleting it, I'm pretty sure. Ignore the Sims that are on it at the moment. They're just the tester Sims that I had. I think they always live on this lot with the Get Together expansion pack whenever it ships. So they ended up being my tester Sims for this particular build. And it changes whenever you bring in a different household, and then you can lock it. So once you lock it, it will stay as it is. But I end up deleting it later and swapping it out with just a normal Life and Death picture instead. But I think it's a fun item. It's kind of a shame that it was an early purchase reward. I think every time I talk about these, I mention it's just so sad to make people miss out. I kind of wish it would be, at the very least, like a timed early purchase reward. So maybe in a year, when the pack eventually goes on sale, it maybe just becomes free for everyone. I don't know how a lot of people might feel about that if they bought the pack for the early purchase stuff, but I personally feel like if I want it early, I'm just gonna pay full price for the pack anyway, so it doesn't really matter if the items end up becoming available for everyone later down the line. I'd kind of prefer it as well. I don't know. Let me know if you've got any thoughts on that. I'd be interested to hear them. But I just don't like it when people have to miss out on stuff. It's just kind of a shame and it makes me sad. And I have serious FOMO about that too, so I understand if you're worried about the early purchase stuff. I can't actually remember the early purchase stuff that's coming in the Enchanted by Nature pack. I think one of them was like a fairy house. There's one in the pack, and then there seems to be one as the early purchase reward, but in a different style, which is so sad that they've split it like that. But again, I won't get into complaining about this early purchase stuff in this video. I think I do that enough. So we can now talk about the bathroom, which we have started decorating here. And I used the items from the Vampire game pack. I really like the style of the toilet and then the sink to match. And just added in plenty of clutter, as well as the mirror from the sleek bathroom kit, because I love it, even though it's kind of modern. And then upstairs, as I mentioned, this is a multi-story bathroom. We have the bath, which I used the one from, I think that one's from Life and Death, and it just looks really pretty. And again, even though it's more modern, I feel as if it kind of ties in as well to being a more traditional style. And adding in lots of clutter here, I took a while to decide what to do with the walls because I just wasn't happy with it. And then I created a gallery wall, which I just felt like made a lot more sense, looked a lot better, and it kind of fits in with the theme of the rest of the house. And then on the very top floor of this bathroom, we have the shower room. So it's a big wet room, and I kind of tried to, again, for realistic purposes, cordon it off using these screens from the sleek bathroom kit. And it is functional. Your Sims can get around them to access the shower. There's also those little hanging plants that I mentioned, which drape down over where the ladder is. And it just feels very luxurious having that entire top floor section of the bathroom just as your shower. I'm not sure about how practical it would be in real life though, because I feel like you'd need it to not be open to the ladder. Water is just probably gonna trickle down. I don't know, it just doesn't really make sense. But for a fairy build, I thought it was a lot of fun. So hopefully you don't mind that it's a little bit crazy and it might take a little bit of time for your Sims to route through. But we are now on the last room of the build, and we're just doing a little kind of cauldron potion making room, because again, we don't have fairies at this point of building this, so spellcasters are the closest occult that we have to fairies, I think. So I wanted to include a little cauldron room too. I made it a bit more kind of natural, made it look a bit more like they were doing apothecary work instead of just normal potions. So I included this little bench which comes from Cottage Living and has a few herbs and stuff on it. And then just in terms of decoration, I don't know why I went so mad for all of the pottery stuff from the Businesses and Hobbies pack, but I just felt like it looked really nice in here. And some of them have really whimsical shapes, so I added a lot of the pottery in, despite the fact that there is no pottery wheel. But again, if you wanted to live in this house and just not be a spellcaster, or even be a fairy when that eventually comes out, you could always switch this room around and include a pottery wheel and the apothecary stuff if you did want. But with that, we are now at the end of the speed build portion of the video. I really hope you've been enjoying it. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Be sure to hit that like button if you haven't already, and subscribe and enable notifications so you'll know when I next upload a video. As I mentioned, I'll be sure to cover the Enchanted by Nature expansion pack with some builds when that comes out. So hopefully you're eager to see some of that content. But for now, I will leave you to the screenshots. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. See you next time. Bye for now.